These are 5 things I wish the UK would steal from Japan. Just as a little disclaimer, everything I mentioned in this video is purely my experience as a foreigner traveling to Japan temporarily. I've only been to Japan twice now. I've never really lived in Japan, so maybe my opinion could change in the future, I don't know. So this is purely based on first impressions and the things I've read and seen online. So bearing that in mind, these are the 5 things that stood out to me. Level of respect. So I'm not saying that England isn't respectful. England is where I live. I would like to consider myself respectful, my friends and family respectful. I'm sure a lot of other people that I don't know in England and the UK in general are quite respectful, right? But in Japan, it's just a whole other level. They seem pretty strict with the rules, whether it be queuing properly, no phones on public transport, no littering, the list goes on. And I think in general, all Japanese people really do respect the rules. And over here in England, it's a little bit different. So I've noticed in England, in a lot of instances, people will cross the road when it's not a green light, people will skip queues, people will graffiti, a lot of different things. And I just wish we could take a little bit from Japan and be a little bit more mindful and respectful of our surroundings and people around us. I also love the fact that Japan really respects and preserves nature. They respect the home, they take off their shoes and wear slippers inside. I really like that. So over here in England, you generally do take off your shoes at home, but I don't think you'd ever take off your shoes before you enter, say, a hotel. Whereas in Japan, before you enter a ryokan, you would take off your shoes before stepping on tatami mats, maybe, to preserve them and to be respectful. And I just really love that idea. And I also love the socks that you wear. I think they're called tabi socks. I have a tabi sock obsession. Japanese people are also really organized and on time. One thing I noticed in Japan when I was there, public transport is always on time, especially the Shinkansens and the trains. Over here where I live, the buses are consistently late. They're barely ever early, but in Japan I think it's a little bit different. A lot of the times they came early. So that is something that I had to get used to, and it was really surprising. I think that also comes down to respect. There's also something I read online that happened years ago in Japan. I think it was in Hokkaido. In Japan, they kept the train station running for one regular passenger who was a high school student. And this was an underused station, so it ended up closing down eventually. But the fact that they kept it open for so long just for her was super thoughtful and super nice. I don't know, something like this just wouldn't happen in the UK, I don't think. Cleanliness. So this is a big one. This is probably the most shocking thing, I think, when I went to Japan. How clean it was. I know online you'll see a lot of videos discussing this, but I think it's just something completely different when you see it in person, when you travel there, and especially comparing it to where I live. Their cleanliness and hygiene levels are just on a whole other level. Everywhere was spotless, there was no litter in sight. Even though there's no bins, people carry their own litter with them. And even in the early mornings, you would see people cleaning the windows, and on the Shinkansen before you even got on, you'd see people in this super nice outfit, and they'd go on and clean the whole thing. And it's just, you never see that here. You see litter on the train and on the buses, people leave things everywhere lying around. It's just really nice. I think that's also something that I would love the UK to adopt. Philosophies, practices, ways of life. So to name a few: wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection; kintsugi or kintsukuroi, I think that's how you pronounce it. The art of repairing broken pottery with this dusted or powdered gold, but it's basically a metaphor for healing and embracing flaws. And again, just because something has been damaged or is now imperfect doesn't mean you need to dispose of it, or that it no longer has value. Ikigai, finding things that give your life purpose. Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. I really like that concept. Encourages relaxation and being aware of your surroundings, heightening all your senses, taking a breath from life's stress. All of these concepts I really enjoy, and they keep you really grounded. I think there's something wonderful about appreciating the smaller things in life, and I definitely think that's something the UK could take from Japan. Not that the UK doesn't have concepts like that, I'm just fascinated with these ones in particular, and I'd love to use that in my own life. Healthy lifestyle. So this is another big one that I think the UK could really take note of. So Japan has a lot of fresh food, fresh seafood in particular. They drink a lot of herbal tea, a lot of green tea in particular. I noticed when I was over there, we'd get green tea all the time offered to us, and I thought that was amazing. I mean, Britain loves tea. Don't get me wrong, we are big tea lovers. But it's just not the same. I feel like some people do drink herbal tea, but in Japan it's a whole experience. It's really relaxing, seeing tea ceremonies. In the vending machines, they'd have tea options, like cold or hot tea options. And I think in the UK, a lot of times when you see vending machines, they'll have a lot of Cokes, Fantas, Sprites, soft drinks. You don't really have like cold green teas to just pick up on the go, which I would love to adopt that. Japan has a lot less sugar in their desserts as well. That is another thing that I'm super jealous of. Japanese desserts are the best. Like, you don't feel that sense of guilt that you do when you have desserts here, because everything over here is like really sugary. Down like from the chocolate bars to the cakes and the goodies, everything is really overly sugary. But in Japan, they prioritize the flavors. And I love savory snacks in Japan, like senbei, rice crackers. I could eat them every day. Whereas I think the go-to snacks here are probably like crisps, cakes, chocolates, mostly sugary stuff. I also thought the UK had way more fad diets, but I could be wrong actually. Our fad diets, like we seem to have so many products of low sugar, low carb, low fat, like a lot of temporary fad diets that don't really make your health any better, seemingly. Whereas Japan seemed to have a really nice, healthy, balanced diet. Especially I noticed in ryokans, when you get the kaiseki meal, it's so balanced, like such variety. I would love to have that instilled in my diet from a young age. A lot of British food is quite bland, dare I say. It can be healthy, but it isn't overly flavorful. But I feel like Japan has the right balance. And they don't cook carbs a lot of the time. I'm sure they do sometimes, but as far as I'm aware, they have a lot of rice in the diet. But where I'm from, I grew up with, you should cut out all carbs or low fat is good. And it's only now that I'm just starting to try and change that mentality. But after second glance, it does look like Japan has had its fad diets in the past. I mean, I've seen things like natto diet, banana diet. But I mean, they don't really sound that faddish. They sound pretty good. I mean, like, I would encourage eating natto and bananas. Like, what's wrong with that? There's the slipper diet. I don't know. Have you heard about that? The slipper diet. I don't know when this was introduced, but apparently Japanese people would wear the slippers, and because you're on your toes, you're like working out your leg muscles, like your calf muscles. And there was also like a balloon diet where you blow up balloons. That's about it. But I mean, again, nothing wrong with that. I think it was to do with working out your facial muscles. But in comparison to our fad diets, like low sugar, which has a ton of sweetener in anyway, or low carbs, I mean, they don't seem too bad. And I'm sure people in Japan have their own body image struggles, as do we all. Japan isn't perfect, but I think overall they do seem to prioritize health, and I think that's a great thing. They do have they have more extensive health checks than we do in the UK, I'm pretty sure. And they're definitely more frequent than ours. I think it takes a long time to get into the doctors. In the UK, I think you have to really have a good reason to be there to have a health check. But I think in Japan, they're readily available, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong there, let me know. I also think Japanese people are taught to cook from a young age, which I think that's amazing. I wish I'd have been taught to cook way sooner. I think Japanese people are really capable, and it's a really good life skill, I think, that I lacked for a long time. I'm super appreciative of the way I was brought up, but it was definitely the consensus that adults are in the kitchen, kids are not. You'll get burned or you'll injure yourself. It just wasn't the place to be. Kids just aren't in the kitchen. I don't know if that's just me, the way I was brought up, but I learned cooking a lot later on. Even in school, the things we got taught to cook was terrible. Like, I got taught to cook well, it's not really cooking, arrange a sandwich, cook a pizza, like things that aren't even that healthy. I think I wish I'd have had that knowledge like earlier on and been able to cook proper meals. I think it would have been way easier. And I also think the UK could learn a lot about portion size. Similarly in America, I would assume. Japan's portion size seems to be a lot smaller than the UK and in America in particular. I think that is something that we could really learn from. And again, like I said earlier, Japan isn't perfect. It has a lot of fried foods. It has karage, tempura, takoyaki, a lot of unhealthy foods, I'm sure. Ramen, which I was sad to hear. I didn't even think that was unhealthy, but apparently it has a lot of salt and a lot of fat in it, maybe from the broth, like the pork broth or something. But even so, I think their portion size and the way they have the balance in their diet is really, really good. Japan's artistic side. Okay, stay with me on this one. It sounds a bit weird, and I highly doubt anyone's mentioned this in a previous video. I think it's something that's really underappreciated. Even Japanese people may not actually realize this because they're so accustomed to it. But as a foreigner, when I was over there, I noticed a lot of musical elements. And artistic elements. So whether it be on billboards, signs, in taxis, or in the trains, on the menus, on product packaging, food packaging, drinks packaging, everything was so pretty. Like, utsukushi. Everything has like, I feel like everyone in Japan can draw. Is that accurate? I don't know. But on everything there was like cute little images and cute little pictures and faces, and it's something that you don't really see in the UK. It's a very niche thing. In Japan I feel like everything's pretty. Everything's cute. Even things that you wouldn't think that would be cute, they end up being cute. And I'm super jealous of that. And the music, whether it be in the toilets, the toilets sing to you when you're doing your business. There's tranquil music when you cross the road. In train stations, I think there's birds chirping. It's just a really nice experience. It's something that's really small but makes a big impact, and it made a bigger impact on me. Like, especially something as simple as crossing the road, right? You wouldn't expect it to be pleasant, but for some reason I was just really happy about it, and I wish we could adopt that here. So there you go. Those were my 5 things that I'd sneakily like to steal away from Japan and stealthily filter into the UK where I live. But what are the 5 things you'd steal or politely take away from Japan? Let me know in the comments below. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to this channel. It means the world to me. It really does. It took a lot for me to do this video today, and a personal, slightly surprising thing that you might not know about me is that I really struggle to talk in videos, especially on my own. I have like 0 self-confidence, but I'm super passionate about Japan, and I just really want to make entertaining videos for you all. If you learned anything in this video about Japan, about my experience, my views on Japan, and if that helps you in your journey, then I did a job well done, I guess. Mite kurete arigato. Never give up. If you ever feel insignificant or have self-doubt like I do, know you're not alone. Good night. Good night. Oyasumi. Bye bye.